and he was unflappable, but he was also entirely delusional. So it was this constant battle in my mind between, is this guy a genius or is he a madman? Because he just would not take no for an answer, and he would not take advice.
And where do you land now?
He's a liar.
Wer, und jetzt komme ich zu unserem ersten Thema des heutigen Tages, wer von euch hat schon mal vom Fyre Festival gehört? Ja, das sind viele. Jetzt mal wirklich die Gegenprobe, weil wir müssen das dann entsprechend so ein bisschen aufbauen. Nicht, dass wir hier die ganze Zeit über Sachen erzählen, die die Hälfte nicht kennen. Wer hat keine Ahnung, wovon ich rede? Danke für eure Ehrlichkeit. Finde ich schon mal gut. Also, das Fyre Festival, und wir werden gleich einen sehr interessanten Gründer kennenlernen, Billy McFarland. Das Fyre Festival sollte 2017 stattfinden und es ist insofern weltweit bekannt geworden, auch weil es dazu eine Netflix-Dokumentation seit kurzer Zeit gibt, die die Geschichte dieses Festivals erzählt. Fyre, the Festival that never happened. So heißt das. Es ist nämlich ein Festival gewesen, was auf einer Bahamas-Insel organisiert worden ist von Billy McFarland, dem Entrepreneur, diesem Gründer und seinem Team. Und dieses Festival hat nie stattgefunden. Sie haben das über mehrere Monate organisiert mit wahnsinnig viel Aufwand. Billy McFarland, der insgesamt 26 Millionen Dollar von verschiedenen Investoren eingesammelt hat, wollte dieses Festival mit seinem Team stattfinden lassen. Sie haben verschiedene, ich sag mal, VIP-Pakete verkauft. Sie haben Beachhouses verkauft, wo die Leute auf dieser Bahamas-Insel leben konnten für die Tage des Festivals, wo sie eine gute Zeit haben konnten. Und man hat dann eben, und das erzählt diese Dokumentation in knapp 2 Stunden, ich versuche es mal in 5 Minuten abzureißen, sie haben dann dieses Festival stattfinden lassen, starten lassen. Und dann sind eben viele Gäste auf diese Bahamas-Insel geflogen und haben sich gefreut auf einen tollen Tag, beziehungsweise tolle Tage mit viel fantastischer Musik. Und dann haben sie Zelte vorgefunden. Als Luxus-Catering gab es dann Käsetoast. Diese Zelte waren so kleine Hütten, so kleine irgendwie runden Zelte, die dann als Luxushouses verkauft worden sind. Und es ist ein riesengroßer Skandal, zumindest damals in den USA gewesen, weil dieses Festival, über das dann bundesweit auch im amerikanischen Fernsehen berichtet wurde, einfach nicht stattgefunden hat in der Form, wie es von Billy McFarland und seinem Team versprochen worden ist. Und das ist insofern eine ganz spannende und auch sehr, sehr interessante Dokumentation, denn Billy McFarland, der als Macher dieses Ganzen, ist dann angeklagt worden und ist für 6 Jahre ins Gefängnis gegangen, beziehungsweise ist nach 4 Jahren im vergangenen Sommer rausgekommen aus den USA, hat also 4 Jahre gesessen, weil er eben 26 Millionen Dollar eingesackt hat und diese Investoren und viele, viele Menschen betrogen hat. Das ist also eine Geschichte des Scheiterns, die er uns heute auch noch einmal erzählen will. Bis gestern war für uns klar, gestern Morgen, er wird hier auf der Bühne sein. Jetzt hat er auch noch Passprobleme. Jeder kann sich da so sein eigenes Bild machen. Wir fragen auch gleich nach, was da genau los ist. Er ist im September letzten Jahres rausgekommen aus dem Knast und hat trotzdem Passprobleme und darf jetzt aktuell die USA doch nicht verlassen. Zuerst hieß es, er darf sie verlassen und als er dann losreisen wollte, hieß es auf einmal an der Grenze, nein, er darf die USA nicht verlassen. Und deswegen werden wir ihn jetzt gleich hier zugeschaltet haben, um auch mal seine Version der Geschichte zu hören. Ich kann nur jedem empfehlen, auch vielleicht sogar nach diesem Gespräch, dann heute Abend oder morgen in den nächsten Tagen, sich diese Dokumentation mal anzuschauen, um noch mehr auch ein Bild darüber zu bekommen, wie eben ein Mann versucht hat, etwas Großes aufzuziehen, dieses Festival. Er hat vorher schon 2, 3 erfolgreiche Startups gehabt, schon in der Highschool angefangen. Das heißt, er ist schon sein ganzes Leben lang als Gründer unterwegs, als Unternehmer unterwegs. Aber wie er wirklich so grandios gescheitert ist, dass er für 6 Jahre, beziehungsweise dann am Ende wegen guter Führung 4 Jahre in den Knast gegangen ist. Deswegen freue ich mich jetzt auf ein Gespräch mit Billy McFarland.
Festival history.
It's an absolute circus. I don't know what's going on. So literally, I was excited, but we didn't know anything.
Arrested and charged with wire fraud. Now the event's co-founder is facing up to 20 years in prison.
I'll read your comment later. Thank you.
Please welcome on stage, Billy McFarland.
Good morning, guys.
Live from the United States, Billy McFarland. Welcome in Germany. A very good morning, a very early morning in the United States. Billy, it's a pleasure to have you. Thank you so much for your time. It's, I think, very early. In which city?
Yes, bright and early. It's just past 5 a.m. in New York. Heard you guys had a late night last night, so wish I was there, but I'm sure we're all feeling the same pain right now. So good morning, guys.
So just thank you so much for your time. We want to hear your story. We want to hear your experience about your career as an entrepreneur. We have very much entrepreneurs here in our room. About 7,000 people here at the moment in Wiesbaden, Germany. Have you ever heard about Wiesbaden? Do you know Wiesbaden?
I'm vaguely familiar. I understand it's the financial epicenter of Germany, and pretty incredible that you guys have 7,000 entrepreneurs all in the area for this weekend. So great to be there, and dealing with a lot of challenges over here too. I think one of the hard parts of getting out of jail is traveling internationally. So wish I could be there, but maybe next year. But happy to dive in today and let's have some fun.
Yeah. Billy, so Wiesbaden is maybe the Bahamas of Germany, that you can imagine, like a little bit. Billy, what about so we heard yesterday, or I think the day before, we heard about the problems, the issues with your passport. What happened? Why didn't you allow to come to Germany?
So I'm less than 7 months from finishing my jail sentence, and there's been just so many challenges in terms of getting back to work, getting back to business. And I literally just, there was a hold on my passport due to taxes from the year of the Fyre Festival in 2016 and 2017. So I just think it's like dealing with the reality of the hurdles of entrepreneurship and what happens when you do things the wrong way. So this is just like one of the many challenges that we're facing to get back to life and recover from the many bad decisions of the Fyre Festival days.
I think many bad decisions about your life, for sure, your business life. Let's talk about your beginning as an entrepreneur. I think you were a very young guy, founded your first companies, right?
Yes, I started and sold a number of companies throughout the early grade school years before going to university, and then started my first venture-funded company my first year of university, and left school after that first year to run that business.
So the first years in middle school, I think, and then the first company, and the first bigger company was, I think, in the first year of college, right? It's called Spling. It was like a social media platform.
So I basically took the money from these small companies I made in middle school and high school and went to college as this 18-year-old boy. And for the first time living away from home, I realized the power of the dollar. And I was going out to dinner and traveling and having fun with my friends, and essentially blew all of that early startup money in the first 6 months of college. And I'm like, oh crap, like this is actually real and I need resources again. So let me get back to what I know. And that was very basic programming at the time. So literally started displaying from my dorm room as a way to like get back to my, fun days. And that took me on a wild ride over 6 years that ultimately led to Fyre Festival, and then a number of years in jail.
Billy, what would you say, looking back for the last 10 or 12 years, what was the secret of your success in the early years? You're like a magician when I can say this. You get the money from the people. It looked very easy. You do that, or you did that. What is the secret? What is your secret as a young guy?
I think that I just didn't know anything. So I was really naive, and that I was good at focusing on single things that I was good at. I think that one example was in my first year of college, I never heard the word venture capital or angel investor. I didn't even know it existed, but they had something called a venture plan competition. And I signed up not knowing what it was. I wrote out this long speech and basically just like memorized and pitched this speech against other students. And in the audience were a handful of like alumni who might have been small angel investors. And I won that competition, and the school gave me like a $5,000 check. So fast forward a few months, I get home after my first year of college, and my parents get my grades in the mail. And they say, basically, you can either quit spling and go back to school or get out of our house because you're clearly not focusing on school.
For sure.
I had literally $200 left in my pocket, and I said, all right, I'm out, but give me 72 hours. I went online and realized like I'm really good at reciting memorized speeches. So let me find somewhere where I can go and give a speech and then maybe get somebody excited through that speech. And I found a pitch competition in a city in the US called Philadelphia. I bought a train ticket, showed up as an 18-year-old, competed against these 45-year-old adults, delivered this 10-minute speech, and met someone in the audience who gave me a check in a Starbucks the next morning.
Okay. Then there was a new idea. In between, you had another idea. It was Magnesis. It was a card for the millennials, a kind of credit card, club card. You found it with your team, and then came Fyre. What was the first idea of Fyre?
So I ended up building this card called Magnesis, and what we were trying to do was to build a black card for young people who lived in cities. And it was all about taking your tech entrepreneur and connecting them with people outside their day-to-day life and giving them access to fashion or finance or entertainment or music. And I was really intrigued by what was happening when all these different people were coming together. And we had a customer who signed up for Magnesis, and he came to our physical hangout space one day, and he worked at Google at the time. And he's like, hey, I'm an AI engineer at Google, but I also fly planes for fun. You should let me start an airline and bring Magnesis members to the Bahamas. And that kicked off what would eventually become Fyre and the Fyre Festival.
And Fyre, I think Fyre was an app?
So Fyre started as an app. And through the Magnesis years, I basically used Magnesis as a way to make all of my childhood dreams come true.
Okay.
And the one thing I really loved as a kid was hip hop and rap music.
Yeah.
But it was so inaccessible to me as this suburban, teenager.
Yeah.
So I ended up trying to book a lot of rap artists to perform for Magnesis members. And during this process, realized how ambiguous the entire music industry was. And it was so hard to connect with these artists.
Yeah.
So I built the Fyre app as a way to provide transparency to the world of entertainment.
So one of your partners became Ja Rule, right? In this time.
Yes.
So
booked a couple of dozen music artists for Magnesis, and Ja Rule was one of them, and ended up partnering with him on Fyre.
Yeah. Yeah. So that was the first idea. So Fyre, the Fyre app was there. There was the idea to book the artists, and then you decided to organize a festival, the Fyre Festival on the Bahamas, to promote the Fyre app. That was the first idea. We have some clips from the documentary from Netflix, and to give our people here in Wiesbaden a small impression, because many of them didn't see the documentary. We have some parts to watch. It's 1 minute 30, and then we have the first impression of the beginning of Fyre. Billy, just wait a second, please.
Yes.
What's crazy is they booked the festival during the busiest weekend of the year on Great Exumas. It's like the Super Bowl there. It's called the National Regatta. And the island basically doubles in population size. And all of the hotels get booked months, maybe a year in advance. Billy had sold a villa package. And these people were essentially staying in an Airbnb. So we had to find houses all across the island for 500 guests. To make it worse, they had oversold their lodge packages, which were these tents on the main site. And then the word comes down from the top that all influencers will get housing for free. So I start calling influencers. I was the first voice that they had heard since they posted. Each influencer, and there were about 250 influencers, were promised for one post, a 1-bedroom, 3-person villa on the beach. That didn't exist. I started talking to Billy, and from the get-go it was, we're all running around scrambling every day to find new houses. We need help from you guys. Start to cut people. These people aren't paying for the experience. Tell them not to come. And it was a constant battle because what they cared most about was the influencers. So I'm imploring them to cancel paying guests at this point. They're not gonna have a place to stay. And the response from Billy was, we're not a problems-focused group, we're a solutions-oriented group. We need to have a positive attitude about this. We need to have a good attitude. And he was unflappable, but he was also entirely delusional. So it was this constant battle in my mind between, is this guy a genius or is he a madman? Because he just would not take no for an answer, and he would not take advice.
And where do you land now?
He's a liar.
So Billy, we heard and saw from the Netflix documentary Mark Weinstein, one of your former colleagues, and the last sentence is, Billy is a liar. Are you a liar?
So first, I have never seen the documentaries, and that was my first time watching, I guess, a clip of it. And wow,
Oh no!
it's
Yes,
definitely
this is the
hard
first
to
time you
watch,
saw.
yeah.
This is the first time you saw, or you heard a part of the documentary. Okay.
Yeah, I've refused to watch for the past 5 years. So wow, you got me to do it.
Yeah. So Mark said you're a liar. Are you a liar?
I think I entered this period of a number of months where I just lost focus on what was important and certainly started lying, whether that was to investors or employees or other people. And I believe that the ends would justify the means. And that unfortunately is not true. And it took a really long time, but I implore anybody in the audience, especially the people who are questioning why I'm given this platform or any other platform. And I understand as an entrepreneur, we're faced with so many hard decisions when we feel like our company is the most important thing in the world. And unfortunately, it's not. And it's who you are as a person, and it's how you build relationships and how you make decisions along the way that are far more important than any short-term success to your business. And I lost sight of that, and it was terrible.
Okay, but now you wouldn't agree, Mark, right?
Yeah, I'm certainly lying for a number of months. There's no way around it.
Okay, Billy, what was the point you saw the first time there are some problems in organization of the festival? Which was the first point of time you recognize, okay, it's much more difficult than I thought?
I just had no logistics experience. I was a tech entrepreneur, and I was so used to being able to build a website in a weekend. And if there was a problem, it didn't really matter because you can go back and fix it. And I was applying that logic to trying to build a city on a remote island. And I was just too naive to understand the differences in physical logistics versus being a web entrepreneur. And it was just such a rude awakening that I just didn't know what I didn't know.
Why did you decide to sell houses which aren't there?
Yeah, so we had a number of factors came in, and we were essentially forced to change locations to different islands a couple of times. And it became a point where it was essentially a mad scramble to fulfill what was sold. And it was a learning process for us. We were trying to figure out what customers wanted. And we obviously sold too many tickets and literally hired these teams to go door to door to send families on vacation so we could rent their houses to try to get it to work for the festival. But just had very, very poor management ability and didn't understand how to properly execute or sell this festival.
I saw many interviews from you in the internet, on YouTube, for all our people, für alle hier. Super spannend, sich verschiedene Interviews mit Billy anzuschauen. It's very interesting to see all the videos and all the interviews from you, Billy, to understand a little bit more what you did the last years in the time before prison, before you get in. But it's kind of genius how you raise the money, and we have another example for that from the documentary.
We would be at standstill sometimes for weeks, not being able to get final sign off or move through on things because he was completely succumbed to the festival needs, spending money at an outrageous cost and speed.
I wasn't sure if it were just like startup woes, just like unorganization, or if it was actually financial trouble. But sometimes payments would be late.
Friday afternoon, our favorite topic is, did you get paid and was it for the right amount? And Michael once was like, yeah, I got paid, but it was in a bag of cash.
I knew that cash flow was becoming an issue, but Billy handled all of the finances. At that point, Billy had said, listen, we're into this for $25 million. I'm like, oh my gosh, Billy, jeepers.
And the word from people that knew Billy was that he was a magician fundraiser. And he just kept pulling money in somehow.
Billy would get on a jet, he'd fly to New York and he'd come back and somehow have another $3 million in his pocket to pull off the next level of needs.
Carolla was one of the many investors. She was a big believer in Billy. She was there from his earliest venture, Magnesis, and then Fyre. She had always been around, always supporting this kid and always believing in his ability to become the next big entrepreneur.
We can figure out how to make an extra $3, $4, $5 million, whether it's higher tier artist passes, food and alcohol passes, VIP party passes, the Kendall dinner yacht party for $10,000 a head for 100 people.
Billy had a vision, you know, and he was definitely thinking of every little twist that he could come up with to raise the money to make it happen.
There's two things going for us. One, an audience who has cash, and us, we have celebrity, we have the island. There's ways we can monetize people, and we're gonna make that happen.
I overheard a conversation, let's put up a cabana for $50,000 and see if anyone buys it. And I remember thinking, do you have a cabana to sell them? Because I'm feeling concerned that you're not thinking about that before you are putting it live on the site for someone to buy.
Billy, $26 million in debt until now. How does that feel?
It is definitely a massive cloud hanging over my head. And I physically feel it. I literally go to the court every 3 weeks to give them a check based on whatever my earnings are. And I think it's the kind of thing that I'm going to have to live with for so many years. And it's also the reality too, that your decisions outlast the failure. The company may no longer exist, but because I did things the wrong way, I will be forever saddled with that debt and responsibility of paying everybody back.
Many people felt or feel cheated, fooled by yourself. Do you understand them?
Yes, and it's been a tough process, and just trying to figure out when it was appropriate to apologize to everybody and what it really means to apologize has been a really maturing lesson for me. And it's hard. There's everybody from workers to investors. I think the biggest debt isn't actually financial, as crazy as it sounds. It's more emotional. And it's the people who had trusted me for a number of years are the ones who I feel like I really owe. And that's what keeps me up at night and gets me up at 4:30 in the morning to try to find a path forward to make this right for everybody.
To make this festival happen, there were some crazy stories. The documentary tells us there were some crazy stories with Andy, or one crazy story with Andy, your event producer. I think he was or is a good friend, or was a very intensive friend of yourself. And he speaks in this documentary about one thing. It was the saving of water, saving of Evian water on the Bahamas. Let's see the example.
Yeah, it was like fucking crazy. I'm not going to talk about that.
Let me tell you something. We had 4 containers filled, 4 18-wheeler trucks filled with Evian water. But I had left the week before for 2 days to go to meetings in Bermuda for the America's Cup. And when I came back, I'd missed the big meeting with Customs. And of course, Customs had said to Billy and the gang, you need to pay us $175,000 in cash today for us to release the water. I went down. Well, Billy called me. I'm going to speak completely, this won't go that far, I'm sure, but Billy called and said, Andy, we need you to take one big thing for the team. And I said, oh my gosh, I've been taking something for the team every day. He said, well, you're our wonderful gay leader, and we need you to go down. Will you suck dick to fix this water problem? And I said, Billy, what? He said, Andy, if you will go down and suck Cunningham's dick, who's the head of Customs, and get him to clear all of the containers with water, you will save this festival. And I literally drove home, took a shower, I drank some mouthwash. I'm like, oh my gosh, and I got into my car to drive across the island to take one for the team. And I got to his office fully prepared to suck his dick. But he couldn't have been nicer. And he's like, Andy, listen, I will release all the water. I will let you serve it. But I want to be one of the first people to be paid this import fee for what you're doing. And I said, okay, great. And I got back and I had all the water that we needed. Can you imagine in my 30 years of a career that this is what I was going to do? I was going to do that, honestly, to save the festival.
Yeah, Billy.
Crazy. I've never seen that.
Just wait a second. Just wait a second because of the applause. This is a part of the documentary. Is this story true?
Ladies and gentlemen, go hire Andy King. He's amazing. I think that like with a lot of this, it was probably a made-for-TV moment. I don't want to take away from Andy and all of his glory. He's, an incredible guy, and I'm sure he would have done whatever it took to make the festival happen. The story was news to me though, and it's definitely weird emotions watching that for the first time. And I think I've been too immature to make myself sit down and watch it. So can't believe he got me to do it.
Okay. Did you talk to Andy after your time in prison, jail?
I have. Andy came up to see me in New York a couple of months ago for the first time. And another meme from the festival were these grilled cheese sandwiches that went viral. So Andy King and I are actually cooking grilled cheese sandwiches next weekend in New York to pay back the Bahamian workers.
Okay.
So looking forward to getting behind the grill and sweating out a little bit with Andy.
All right. Billy, how does that feel to hear about, you didn't see the documentary, to hear about the documentary? I think many people talk about to you about the documentary on Netflix. The whole world can see it. How does that feel that there is a documentary? You weren't able to talk because you were in jail. And to hear about all these facts, I think there were some people you didn't meet ever in your life. What is your personal opinion about the documentary?
Yeah, you're getting my live reaction right now, and it's really, really hard to hear other people talking about you. Like I don't know how to handle listening to that. And I think like so much of it is because I was so wrong, and I understand I was the root cause and deserve all of it, but it's still like, as a human, 6 years later, it's like, wow, like one, I really, really fucked up. And two, just hearing other people speak about you like that, it's never going to be easy for me.
What do you feel about the people who felt or who feel fooled by you? What do you think about the people?
I owe so many apologies, and like it started in my jail cell writing letters, and it's progressed to, physically starting to face people back and doing some work to make that happen. I just want to let people know that there is such a long road ahead, and this is not going to be done in 2 years or 3 years. I'm going to have to do so much for the next 10, 15, 20 years to make this up to everybody. And that is just the most important thing to me.
Did you learn this in jail?
Sorry?
Did you learn, what did you learn in jail in your time, the 4 years in prison?
Yeah. I think the biggest lesson from jail, and this sounds cliche, is that the process is just so important. And I think when I was in the most difficult times of jail, where you're relying on a small number of people, it's like there is nothing more valuable in business or in life than having a number of really, really close, trusting relationships. And that is far more important than this like meteoric rise to success. So I viewed relationships as more transactional than they really were. And I think now I'm really focusing on the opposite approach, where success is secondary to just like these really great bonds with people that you're working with and spending time with.
Talking later in a few minutes about the future, Billy, but just one last example from the documentary. It was there were some pictures from the first night of the festival. The first guests arrived on Exuma on the Bahamas, and then the rain came. Let's see the example.
Yes.
So we're standing outside on the porch of this mansion, looking out at the ocean, and it's like a full moon or something, and it starts pouring rain. Pouring rain. Thunder and lightning. So you have to realize the site's unfinished. There's mattresses all over the place getting soaked. Any tent that was done is now unlivable, and the guests are still coming. And we have nowhere to put them.
Turn around. we see this sea of white little tents.
There was a disbelief on the bus. A lot of people thought that, oh, maybe we're passing through this area. Our villas are just on the other side.
And it was the bus driver who said, oh no, that's where you're staying. It was like, oh my God.
Everyone was like arguing, Everyone was like making noise, so like, where I'm gonna stay, what I'm gonna do, what I'm gonna eat.
Billy McFarland stood up on a table. So finally I just kind of walked up and I said, where do you go if you have a villa? And he said, everybody that has a villa, just go grab a tent. And so this whole mass of people, I was like, all right, it's a free-for-all.
Everybody starts sprinting, running to their tents, grabbing bags.
We heard this voice, and then we heard this rush, and then we heard the scream, and we walked out, and there was just this mass of people going to tents.
So as I was tweeting about the event, just to be like, this is what's going on. Like, here's the lockers, here's the concierge stand. This is what Fyre Festival is. The tweets just started going viral. It was just kind of the perfect thing to consume in real time.
Then I saw the Twitter post, the cheese sandwich. That was when I knew this was done.
I remember the New York Times came out with an article that talked about this entire Fyre Festival, and they talked about it very matter-of-fact from an operational perspective. What they didn't talk about, which I think was something that was missed, was a couple of powerful models posting an orange tile is what essentially built this entire festival. And then one kid with probably 400 followers posted a picture of cheese on toast that trended and essentially ripped down the festival.
I didn't even know where Billy went. I went to the house and it was like literally cleaned out. And I was like, yo, where's Billy,
Billy, first of all, I have to say I have so much respect for you that you're sitting here in front of us because of the issues of the passport, not personally here in Wiesbaden in Germany, but I think all of us, we have respect that you are here to give us answers to all these things. What happened? When you hear about,
Thank you.
And to fail.
Thank you.
And much of us knows that, to fail belongs to life, for sure. But Billy, when you see that, when you hear the voices, when you remember the year 2017, this first night on Exuma, the first things, you're standing at the table, do you feel ashamed?
Mortified. And I feel ashamed for how I felt in that moment. And I just remember standing on that milk crate, going through my mind, not realizing that it was all my fault at this point. And in my head, it's like, I have 700 employees. I can't find anybody. Where is everybody? And that was still my mindset as, a 25-year-old on a death mission. And now 6 years later, it's looking back, and it didn't matter if I had 700 employees or 7,000 employees. The way that everything was happening was so wrong, it would have been impossible for anybody else to save it. And it's just like such a lesson in operation and failure and really integrity.
Did you have the opportunity to say sorry to the people, to apologize?
I have, and it's just such a process. And for some, it was too early. For some, it was too late. And for some, they're receptive, and others just tell me to get lost. And I understand that. And I really believe that I need to pay everybody back. And it's not money, it's trust. It's how can I be someone they can call in 5 years or 10 years and know that I'll be there for them like they tried to be there for me.
I think it hurts to lose the trust of the people because there were many, many friendships and all that. What do you think? How difficult will it be to be a trust person again?
That's my biggest motivation. And as a human, like that hurts the most. There were so many people who I loved and respected who will not deal with me now. And that's been the hardest to get over. And I feel like everything else is replaceable except that lost trust. And time and good actions are the only thing that can solve it. But it's hard. And there's no answer right now for it.
What is your plan for the future?
So for me, it's taking my time. And I think with Fyre, it was this 4 or 5 month sprint from marketing video to trying to make something happen. And going forward, it's really about getting back to what I'm good at. It's getting back to taking people from technology and entertainment and bringing them together and really fostering those relationships and those connections. So while I have new projects and new companies and media things I'm working on now, which is all great, it's really about how can I rebuild that trust and how can I connect different people and build something sustainable for the future.
I read some headlines the last days from the United States that there will be a Fyre Festival again, Fyre Festival 2. Is that right? Or other question, are you crazy?
So definitely crazy, and it's definitely something that needs to happen in the future. I think what was really interesting was...
You want to do that? It's Fyre Festival 2 called, or...?
It's not going to be tomorrow, but it will be at some point in the future. And I think what was interesting is the first time around, we raised, whether correctly or incorrectly, so much money for marketing and hired all this talent to get all the attention for it. And for Fyre Festival 2, it was a 2-sentence tweet that arguably got more impressions with no marketing spend. Just an interesting take and like class on marketing to be had there. But it's not going to be the next couple of months, but it's something that in the future, I believe I have to do to complete the redemption.
Billy, at the end, are you a criminal person?
If you asked me 10 years ago, it's like, I think the question is like, is everybody in jail bad? And 10 years ago would have been like, of course, they're in prison. And having gone through jail and meeting incredible people who just had no opportunity, and then coming out of jail and meeting bad people who have a lot of opportunity, I think that like we are all very complex humans. And I think that I just went wrong to a level that was not acceptable. And I deserve to lose everything and be punished and go to jail. And like, there is no excuse for my behavior.
Billy, our time is over until now. It was it's great, awesome to talk to you, to hear your story from your point of view. I think all the people here in Wiesbaden and our arena will see the Netflix documentary in the next days, when they didn't see it until now, because it's very interesting to see. I think the most important thing, and maybe you agree, is when you fail, it's the most important thing to get up again, right?
Yes. And the failure in itself was amazing in that there were so many lessons. And had I failed honestly, it would have been the best thing to ever happen to me. The fact that I failed by lying is not okay, but go for it and fail honestly, and you'll be forever grateful for that.
Billy, thank you so much for your time. It's very early in the morning, and very much thank you for sure to be so honest with us and to tell your story from your point of view, a very honest part, and thank you so much for answering some difficult questions. I know that, but it's part of your history, it's part of your life, and in my personal opinion, you do a great way to talk about the fail that other people can learn, and you learned as well. Thank you so much. Best to New York.
Thank you, guys.
Billy McFarland.